waiting for you to get back.
Nah, you're good. You're good. So we'll here we go. Hold on. All right, perfect. So should be live now. Thanks for everybody for showing up tonight. Glad to get this kicked off on the Pantheon Radio as well as on Twitch TV. Guys, I'm going to step away and pass over to Maul for a second. But before I do that, I just want to make sure that everyone has a reminder, if you haven't already checked out pantheonradio.com. Also, go check out the competition they got started up. I'm going to remind everybody at the end of this podcast as well as at the beginning. I want to make sure that everybody's aware of this. It's happening all March long. It's pantheonradio.com/compo or COMOP. You can also find the enter here button on pantheonradio.com. Check that out. Really cool. Get that submission in. Looking for some spoof commercial ads to play over Pantheon Radio. You know, something neat, fun. I think people are going to have a good time with it. So I'm hoping that it catches on and people really get involved in it, invested. But other than that, Maul, I just wanted to kind of pass over to you for a few minutes. Like I said, I've got to run just real quick, try to take care of my kid, get him to sleep. He's having a little bit of a coughing fit, so I'm going to go take care of him. But if you want to, we have a few questions that we had kicked off. And I don't know, maybe you want to give your opinion on, like, for example, the rage quit question that we had, or some of the other things that we had come in about the buffs and environmental effects, even the loot system. You're more than welcome to talk about any of it. And even bring up some of your own ideas or discussions. I'm not sure if you can see the chat we have in Twitch as well.
Yeah, happy to do, guys. Sacred's
Okay.
got to step away for a bit, but this is Muldoon, MRPD Muldoon, and I can take it from here, Sacred, if you need to run away. All right, guys, so we had the February 2018 roundup today. There's a lot of stuff that was shown in that. If you haven't, take a look. Just do a Google search for Pantheon MMO February 2018 roundup. Excuse me, there's a lot of great information on that. We had some fun little questions on there, like, have you ever rage quit? Some of the things we wanted to talk about in today's podcast. And since we're kind of going a little off the cuff, Sacred really had to step away. I'll go ahead and get us started on some of those questions and see if people here on Twitch want to engage in that. Maybe you at home, wherever you're listening, just want to kind of think about it yourself. I absolutely believe that every single person in the world has rage quit a game, or at least rage to the point where they gave up or something like that. Rage quitting just over anything. It's it's just a video game, but it could be literally any kind of game. Just got you so miffed. It could be an experience that you had in it. Have you ever experienced that? And I know I have. I want to say that I am very emotionally intelligent, highly capable of keeping my emotions in check, but I can get pretty fiery. And when I'm playing a game like Dota, which I played very religiously for many years with a couple of my friends, I definitely get so angry at that, I will just shut down. And actually, I think that's probably the number one skill to have in Dota, other than having a billion APM per second, per minute per second, is to just keep a level head, because not everything's going to go as as it's supposed to. But man, I would get on there and I didn't know I was capable of such scumbaggery human behavior, raging at people, getting really mad, blaming my team, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it kind of plays in a little bit to what kind of person you are in general. I'm just a highly competitive person. I tend to set the bar really high for standard performance where I work, where I play, all around me. And a team game like that, if you don't have a level head, if you can't find ways to just focus on yourself and do the best you can, then it's really easy to rage at other people and just get really hot headed real quick. So that's been my experience. As soon as I read that question today in the roundup, I was like, well, we talk about that in the podcast. I'm going to sound like a mental case, and I can't wait, because it's funny. Like, I'm a really nice guy. I'm actually like sweet and really kind. I'm from Oklahoma. I'm a Southern boy. I'm gay. I mean, there's all kinds of things about me that just predispose me to being really nice. But if I'm playing a video game, something changes. I'm like a different person. I'm just so competitive. I'll snap. I'll flip. I'm a lot better at it now. Probably because I don't play Dota as much, but man, it's really easy for me to just flip the switch on that. If I'm playing with some friends I don't know very well and I don't want to expose that side of myself, then I tend to be good. But with these other friends that I've played with for years, oh my God, we said some horrible stuff to each other. Just, oh man, I don't know if any of you guys out there have experience with Dota or other multiplayer online battle arenas, MOBAs, but they can tilt you pretty quick. Let's see somebody here in Twitch saying when you're doing in-game content and things aren't going the way you think they should, brings out the worst in people. That is a great point. And I was just about to segue into how raging might be applicable in Pantheon. And I see it in two areas: PvP, because that's just a highly competitive environment that's just as much yourself as it is a team, depending on if we have battlegrounds, group PvP, whatever PvP looks like in Pantheon. That is just so down the road. We could sit here and speculate all day, but rating, hands down, is the most infuriating thing to deal with in an MMO environment, especially if you're a high pressure, cutting edge guild. I think anybody who's played Pantheon probably started with EverQuest and then went on to World of Warcraft at some point. So at some way down the road, they've hit this point where they have they have played with some people who are not so great, or they're the weak link in a great guild, or you're got your little clique inside the guild. You guys think you're hot stuff, and you're treating other people like crap because they're not doing so great. It's just, yeah, it can become very frustrating. A question here in Twitch. I'm gonna read it out loud because I think it's funny. Can you please just start playing? You know what? We would all love to. We would love for this game to already be released and be at a stage that we want to play it. But Pantheon MMO is just not there yet. But as soon as it is, I'm sure we'll all be playing and not sit here talking about random questions about, have you ever rage quit? So, um, if again, just check out the roundup, guys. Whenever you're checking that stuff out, you can see all the different little social media fun little questions, just things to kill the time, engage with other members of the community while you're thinking that stuff through. Um, in general, I believe there was something else that Sacred and I wanted to talk about specifically together. It was a question he had encountered, so I'm going to save that one for when he gets back. Uh, Another thing that was mentioned here, just another question that was part of the roundup. I want to know if buffs, debuffs, and environmental effects are going to be in the same window. And are we going to have to deal with buffs dropping as debuffs overwrite them, like in EverQuest? Or can we finally see a debuff window that will have environmental effects in there as well? That is a really great question. It's a hard one to answer because the developers of Pantheon, especially Brad McQuaid, had so much to do with how buffs and debuffs worked in EverQuest. And on one hand, I think it's really intuitive that if you have a speed boosting ability on your bar, and it's keeping you moving freely, or it's moving you quickly, and then you get snared, it makes sense that you would have trouble moving, and it also kind of makes sense that that buff would get overridden. However, logistically, that's a nightmare, especially in early EverQuest, because if anybody remembers in EverQuest, you would spend sometimes like 10 minutes buffing your group, trying to med through it just to be able to heal as a cleric, or whatever you're buffing. To have your buff overridden is an assault that I don't wish upon a lot of people in gaming. I'm kind of glad that other games out there have been pretty scarce on following that same suit with having buffs overridden by debuffs. That's just me. I think a lot of people that are drawn to Pantheon, there's a group of people who are like, oh man, I can't wait to have to do corpse runs, and I can't wait to lose experience when I die. This games are so easy these days, and that's cool. I remember being okay with that and just dealing with it when I was a kid. But I certainly don't wish that upon myself. And I kind of hope that if debuffs and buffs um, are in a separate window, that they don't override each other. I would like in 4 seconds, whenever that snare or poison is off of me, that I haven't lost some corresponding buff that was going to last for like 15, 20 minutes. I think that's a quality of life thing that really should be considered. I don't think we have any indication at all that Pantheon is going in that direction for any reason, that they're going to mimic that same buff debuff situation. But I think the reason this kind of question comes up is because of how heavily based the Pantheon experience on EverQuest, or the how based on EverQuest the Pantheon experience probably was, at least in its initial conception. We might see that as these questions are asked, these social media little reachers, I think these questions are meant to draw up hype about the game and kind of get the community working together and talking, having fun. But I can't help but notice that Kilson and people who are part of, like the community manager and anybody who's out there, I think they're wanting to get an idea of what the public consensus on certain features of the game should be. Because as much as Pantheon really needs to be a game that is distinctly different from others in the market, they don't want to just create something that's a beautiful little creature that nobody wants to play, you know. So I kind of feel like these questions that we see in the roundup might be a really good way for people who want to be heard to voice their opinions on this stuff. I highly suggest that if you guys have not been to the forums and that you're not active there now, I get it, because I've played many a game where I've not been active in the community, but there's never been a more fragile and critical time to be part of the community, because you get a pretty good pulse on the direction the game is going based on what they release and what people know and what they share with each other. But also, this is a time where they're really going to be looking to the community to figure out what we. So I would just, as I know, whenever I opened up the roundup today, my instinct was, okay, skip the Twitter questions. But because I've become available or part of this radio, I'm sorry, I'm really distracted. This cat is driving me nuts. Ever since I became a part of this, and because I really want to be a big streamer in Pantheon, I'm very passionate about the game. I read between the lines. I can see that there is some element of need to address these questions and have fun.
I'm back.
And Sacred's back. Yay!
It's so much more fun when someone's here.
Oh, yeah, it is. But, you know, apparently I've proven I can just sit here and talk. So
Hey, that's more than I can do. Okay, so where we at?
So we've actually gone through the entire agenda. We're good. We can go ahead and close down the radio.
All right, guys. Had a good time. Thanks. We'll. No, but
I was speeding through. We talked about Rage Quit. I'd kind of like to hear what you have to say about that. I think you're kind of like me. You're a real sweet Southern guy, but I think in a game, because you're a highly competitive person, you're gonna get real nasty real quick sometimes, and other times you can keep your cool. That's kind of where I was with my answer.
So I'll say it like this: I typically don't rage quit because of a game. That's just me. I'm not a big so I'm not gonna be so mad at a game that I'll rage quit. But when I combine friends with that game, I can get so frustrated with my friends or with myself that I will quit in a hasty manner. And I'm not talking like in the middle of something quit, unless I'm just being funny for the most part, or sarcastic towards my friends because they're, we're giving each other a hard time. But like if I'm actually upset about something and I just got to get out of it, then I will leave in a hasty manner. But it's normally because, so I have very high expectations for myself. Yeah, I am very competitive. But when it comes to gaming, I try to be more relaxed, more, chill about it and things like that. But then again, when I play with my friends, I play with a lot of military members as well. We all have very competitive nature. Most of them have that alpha male syndrome. So when we're all in a room together playing, having a good time, what will normally happen is I'll have expectations of myself, and I'm saying, look, I'm doing the best I can. And their expectations are, you need to do better. And because we're so close in friendships and like real life and everything, we usually tell each other, oh, you're terrible, you're not doing well. And if I'm not doing well and I know that I'm upset with myself already and someone else is reminding me on top of that, like normally I'm just like, you know what, I need to just give up on the game for tonight and just do something else. Because I'm just going to, at this point, continue to get more and more upset until it gets to a point where I'm not, enjoying this anymore. I'm already to a point now where I'm starting to get frustrated. And I'm beating myself up, and now my friends are adding on to it just because they're good friends of mine. And now I'm not only internally beating myself up, but I'm getting some external help as well. And I'm just like, you know what? I can see the path in the front of me. It's not going to go anywhere positive. I'm starting to get frustrated. I'm going to go ahead and exit. I usually do that before I ever get to the point of, I can't handle this anymore. Got to go, boom, done. Because I think that once you're to that rage quit point, it's just one of those, like you've just tried to push too far for too long. And it's not worth it in a lot of games. A lot of times, I can understand. If you're doing a raid and you're trying over and over and over again, and you die and you die and you die. For me, honestly, I never get mad about that. I get frustrated sometimes when it's silly things that cause us to wipe or something like that. Yeah, of course, but I never get mad about it. But if I'm playing like another type of game, like a first-person shooter where it's a straight competition, you versus me, when it comes to like PvP, for example, in an MMO, if I'm playing that and it's you versus me and it has something to do with I'm just not at that high of a level and I'm not enjoying this because it's continuously just beating me down and down, I usually find that frustration early on and I say, you know what, I can already see where this is going and I steer that clear. So that's kind of my thing on rage quitting. I've never been one to just get so mad at a game that I just shut it down altogether. And again, and if I do ever, it's usually because I'm playing with my close friends and I'm just like, I'm done. And but it's kind of a mutual thing. And we're all kind of at that point in time. And it's just, everybody's like, all right, someone had to leave. I'm glad they did. So now we can all leave.
Yeah, I agree. And since they all heard my answer before, I won't really repeat it. But with Dota, I've played a lot of PvP MOBA type games. With Dota, it's usually like I don't like to abandon. I don't like that stat, having abandoned games. But man, it's really funny because not only would I do it, but I would see my friends. We'd all be talking and having a good time. It gets real quiet about 30, 40 minutes into the game. And you can tell people are just stewing and they're just really not happy. And then when you lose, you hear two people drop out of Discord. You're like, well,
yep,
I guess we're done.
Yep, that's a good night. Well,
Cyrus had brought up the point that in-game rating was where he had seen a lot of rage quitting, and I had kind of segued to, yeah, so what we'll probably see in Pantheon is rage quitting might be most applicable in the raiding scene, depending on how hard it is, how much pressure there is in your guild to do well in that, and then also whatever PvP is in Pantheon, I could see that being a source of it, but I can't see getting really mad at crafting or anything like that. I think that's going to be a pretty peaceful and serene experience.
Well, okay, so I think there's two different types of rage quit, though. There's one that's caused by game mechanics, and there's one that's caused by people. The one that's caused by people is the most abundant, in my opinion. Because normally what happens is the mechanics are in place. It's just you trying to perfect the mechanics. Now, if you're trying to perfect mechanics, like if you're trying to train for a sport, if you're trying to train for any type of, eating competition even. And you've got somebody in front of you and they're like, you have to eat 50 hot dogs. And you're like, I can't eat 50 hot dogs, but I'll get as close as I can. And they're yelling and screaming at you the whole time like a drill instructor would. And they're just going to town and they're making it a very unpleasant environment. You're not going to want to even attempt to eat more than you absolutely have to. But at the same time, if you're there and you've got somebody cheering you on, encouraging you, and they're like, you know what, you didn't get 50 this time, but hey, tomorrow we'll come back and try to. Yeah, but tomorrow we're gonna come back and try again. We're gonna do it until we get it. They're keeping a positive attitude. Even like for a gym, if you're at the gym, some people react in a different way to someone screaming at them that they can do it. Some people react in a way of, I can't do this, I'm done, stop yelling at me. Other people react in, you're right, I'm going to do it. So the person, you never know who that person is. Now, for me, if I'm on a video game and I'm having fun and enjoying it and we wipe or we have something go on where, I don't know, we miss a pull, we pull too many or something, happens in a dungeon or raid and it wipes us. And it was kind of a stupid mistake. We missed a CC, we missed we didn't see an ad, we didn't see, a patroller or something. And we wiped the raid because of that. Yeah, it's a stupid mistake. But for me, let's say I'm a guild leader at that time. I'm the raid leader, for example. I'm not going to be beating down people's throat and just chewing into them to let them know that that's something that's not acceptable. Instead, I'm gonna be like, oh guys, man, I guess we just got to pay attention next time. Hey, good try. Let's get back up here and get reset. Because I think if you keep a positive attitude, people are more inclined to have fun, even though they're not doing that great. They're still having fun and enjoying it. But if you're just down their throat, you missed this, now we're 5 minutes behind and we're not going to get to where we want to go today. You've cost us this, and it's like, wow, I don't even know if I want to do anything, because now I'm afraid if I make another mistake, I'm just going to be basically, a chewing toy for whoever this guy is, across this voice channel. And I think that's where a lot of people get really frustrated, is when people come into the mixture and they either, if you're beating yourself up about a mistake, they're adding on to that and fueling your inner fire, or they're turning your good mood into a bad one by showing you all the mistakes you're making and telling you how bad you are. And that type of stuff, at first, usually people are like, no big deal. But if you're in a raid for like 3 hours and you've got somebody that's just beating you up the entire time, eventually you just get to the point and you go, why even bother? And if you do that on a consistent basis, week in and week out, again, it gets to the point of, why am I even coming to this? And you almost come to that raid with that mentality, with that almost bad mindset of, if this guy starts yelling at me, I'm just out, I'm done, And so your fuse becomes very, very short with that individual. And then again, you start having people bickering back and forth, and it creates a very hostile environment. And I don't think people want to be a part of it. So rage quitting in that environment, it doesn't seem like a big deal. It's almost like a relief. It's like, oh, this is easy. So I think when you have people involved, the people rage quit factor is more prominent, because that's where things over time will build up. Bashing people, like, Cirilla said in chat here, bashing people, or it's things like that are really going to come into play. However, when it comes to mechanical rage quits, those are few and far between, in my opinion. And those are normally due to something RNG, or some random factor that you can't control. You're just rolling the dice. It's a luck type of deal. And that's where I think crafting could actually come into play. If you, for any particular piece or chance, have a random factor in crafting. Let's say that you throw mats into a pot, and those mats have a 99% chance of success and a 1% chance of failing, and they take forever together. They're just like, it's like a legendary staff or something, and you've got all the mats, finally took you 3 weeks to gather it, and it's a 99% chance to succeed, and all of a sudden you hit that 1% chance to fail. I could see somebody just being like, I just spent 3 weeks on this, I'm done. I needed, because their hopes were up. They were so excited. They had
the number one thing. Yeah. You nailed it. I think when you're talking like something intrinsic to the game, it has nothing to do with the people. Unless there's some kind of loot council or something that like guarantees you the item, you have this, you're just hyped up for it. Something like that. I have seen people quit a guild straight up over gear, because that's the only time, the only reason you're doing something. Watch your motivation have gone to basically nothing. Crazy.
Oh, absolutely. That's a really good point too. Yeah, if you're in a raid, and not only the people say they have a positive attitude, but let's say you're in a raid for 6 months and you're trying to get that one item, you've been going every day consistently to get that one item, and you're the first in line for it. You're the most, you're the downright best person as far as like you've got the most, let's say you're using DKP, or let's say the loot council's in place. You've got a loot council and they basically said, this item's yours, and everything's going your way, and then all of a sudden that item drops, and for some reason, some random factor happens, something happens within the loot council, something happens within the DKP, or somebody just decides that you're not the best person to have it, and then you no longer, it goes to somebody else. At that point in time, they go, oh, well, it's fair. That's just the way it is. And it's like, well, hold up. They got here a month ago. I've been here for 6, and I've been doing this for 6 months to get that one piece of that one gear, that one item. And now I no longer have that item after 6 months of grinding for it. You're like, I'm not waiting another 6 months for somebody else new to come in and take that from me. Something like that. I think absolutely. I've seen people just right out the gate, they go, oh, I've been trying to get this for this many months. This guy comes in a month later, gets the item, and I don't. I'm done. Thanks, guys. I appreciate the time. I can absolutely see something like that happening.
Yeah, I think it comes down also the best way to mitigate that. Like if we want to move the conversation to how do you avoid people rage quitting, it's being an effective communicator. And that to me has been the number one pillar of my life since probably my mid 20s. I read like The Power of Now. I've read so many books. I've Asian philosophies and everything, and all of it's about creating your own suffering. And I I have this idea in my mind that suffering comes from basically usually miscommunication. If you think about all your relationships and everything that fall apart, anything that goes wrong in your life, it's either some expectation wasn't met or a miscommunication, usually. And
Yeah.
I think it's really important as raid leaders, raid officers that if like a fight's not going well and you've been spending hours and hours on it, people are getting frustrated. Just as you said, don't bash people. Being able to effectively communicate constructive criticism, saying, "Hey, you're doing it wrong, but this is how you can be doing it right. See what your class lead's doing it over here. See what other people are doing." That level of communication really helps that because as much as we all have our own responsibility to keep an even head, I think it's also the responsibility of the people that are in the group to create an environment of openness and being calm because if that is not the environment, then it's going to go 0 to 60 real quick.
Absolutely. So I'm going to kind of transition over into one of the questions that we had, which was around loot systems. And excuse me. Uh, so Lex in the chat here on Twitch brought this up, said that miscommunications or greed, and greed is a really big thing that I try not to bring into this conversation or this type of conversation because, well, let's just put it this way. Hopefully, if you're in an environment, if you're in a guild, if you're in a raid and you're doing things for months on end, then you've built some sort of trust and relationship up with the people you're doing it with. And if that trust and relationship is broken in a moment's notice by greed, I'm hoping it's not just that one person that's upset about that. I'm hoping that it's as a group of human beings, you're able to see what went down and what happened, because sometimes it can just be simply a fact of you were not miscommunicated to, you were just flat out lied to. And now once that piece of gear is here, the greed factor kicks in and it's, you know what, I don't see you as a human, and I'm going to just take this for myself type of conversation. So I hope that doesn't happen. I'm hoping we steer away from that. We don't see that, but it does, I know, happen on occasion. It has happened in the past. It will continue to happen in the future. You can't take out that factor, that greed factor within the human nature. But at the same time, I'm hoping we don't see that nearly as often as we do the other scenarios. So with that in mind, looking at the loot system, how do you help keep it fair? What type of loot systems will be in place? So the question that was asked, how is the loot system going to work in groups? Is there going to be a need greed system with lotto roll? One thing I hate is when people roll in items and they can't use the item. How do you think the system should be? Now, I'm going to go ahead and start this conversation off with, I don't know how it's going to be. I'll just go with how it should be, in my opinion, or what I would expect to see type of scenario. Because I don't think that I can really tell VR or dictate how it should be, because I may not know the best answer for that. They may have to come up with a solution of way of doing the loot system that is so much better than what I have in my mind from my own experience and my own thoughts. So I'll kind of kick it off with, for me, when we're looking at looting, I like to see things as fair as possible. I like to see the person factor play a huge role in this. Meaning, if I'm in a raid, or if I'm in, let's say, just a dungeon, let's just say I'm running, because I think in a raid, I think looting is going to be even a little more different. Different guilds and different raids will handle looting as they best see fit, I believe. I don't think that anything that VR will come up with in place will ultimately be the end-all be-all for every single guild when it comes to looting. But I do think when it comes to groups and dungeons, those 6-man groups that are going through a dungeon, for example, I think that group looting is something that will be answered mostly by what VR puts in place for us, if not completely. So with that, what would I like to see? I would personally, I don't mind the need greed system. I don't mind the lotto roll. However, I prefer to have it just in place where you have a group loot, for example, and that group loot meaning, so if me and Maul and a few other guys are in a group, I would hope that if I'm looting an item and I go, hey guys, I just looted this staff, I'm a rogue, I use daggers, I don't need it. Does anybody need a staff that gives increased, I don't know, spirit for a healer or something? And Maul, let's say Maul's playing a cleric. And Maul's like, you know what, I don't really need a staff, but I don't have anything that gives a stat like that. And it'd probably be really good for me. You know, if you're willing to part with it, then I wouldn't mind taking it and using it until I find something better for myself. I personally would hope that if I'm in a group like that and I get that item and it's better fit for somebody in the group, even if it's not a perfect fit, if it's a better fit for them and they can actually use it at that point in time, I would hope that I would be the type of person to go, okay, great, and pass it on over. That way he could use it in the group and we can continue moving forward, hopefully at even a faster pace now that he's got increased stats or something like that.
Yeah, if I could just jump in real quick, because
absolutely,
in no game have I ever seen, I was thinking about this earlier, and then you just mentioned that. We've all been in that situation because most games at this point have like a 1-2 hour window of like, you know, hey, you were just in this group with this guy. He's got this piece of gear. Why don't you pass it over if you don't need it? Otherwise, you can sell it, whatever. Why don't, so if they're going to put any effort into an advanced looting system, why don't they make it possible that group members can, for an item that can be traded to other people in the group, that they can put it up for lotting again? Just say, you know what, turns out I don't want it, don't need it. I just want to go ahead and kind of like if the need greed box pulled up first when it was first examined and looted, why not make it so someone can just make that happen again? Because sometimes the negotiation of that is almost not worth it because you've got two people who really want it and you get like, oh, everybody roll. If somebody decides they don't need that, they could just like, boop, click a button, put the item in a window, click a button, and then it gets relotted to other people. I think that'd be really cool. Just stuff I've never seen before that could kind of feed to that spirit of giving and kind of sharing and trying to progress as a group. That would be interesting because as it relates to the whole question, I mean, a lot of games have a need before greed system, you know, just different ways to handle group loot. I think it'd be interesting to have if the system is there that encourages that kind of behavior and people use it, it will foster an environment, a whole culture of sharing items. You know what I mean? So I wonder if they can just use the technology to kind of foster that culture.
So you're thinking instead of just a slash roll, for example, you're thinking just actually make it part of the UI to where you can, as the individual holding the item, click a reroll almost, and it pop it up, and then everybody can click no, 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 I don't want to do it, or yes, I would like that item. I'm gonna submit my, you know, my bid or my roll, and then whoever rolls highest, the item just automatically shoots over to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Because we've all had that moment where you're like, oh man, I really shouldn't have needed on that. Someone's saying they really could use it. Okay, fine, I'll give it to them. It's also kind of a good faith way of being like, you know what? Yeah, I did real need on that. Turns out I didn't need it. Let's just push it out. And it makes it fair for everybody. And it's highly visible. It's really good for credibility and hopefully making people seem like they actually care about their people when it comes to loot. Because sometimes self-serving needs are actually greed. So.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring this up. So I think, and Lex brought this up in chat, so I believe that this is something that I wanted to bring up, and I'm glad that he reminded me just so we could talk a little bit more about this. But one of the things I've had an issue with myself on need greed systems, like I said, I don't mind them because normally I try to play with people I know. But it's when you play with people you don't know, or when later down the road people say, "Oh, I need that item because I need the gold. I need that item because I need the thing for my ult." You know, it's like wait, your ult isn't here, and we have two players that can use it. Why are you really neat on it? One of the things, you know, that we continuously see with need greed systems is if people have the option to roll need on it, and for any reason whatsoever they would like it, any reason, it doesn't have to be a good reason at all. Any reason, they'll roll need on it. And with let's say a rogue, let's say a staff drops and that staff gives spirit, and I'm a rogue and I say, oh, that staff sells for 40 gold. I could really use 40 gold. All right, need. And all of a sudden that whoever, was rolling on that actually needed it is going, wait, why did I not get that? Why did you even have an option to roll on that? And you're like, oh, I needed it for my ult. And it's like, yeah, I'm just really going to go throw it in the vendor here in about 10 minutes for 40 gold. And it's again, it's one of those things. It's a constant battle. There's not really a great solution for it. And if you have it limited so much to where, oh, you're a rogue, you cannot roll need on this at all, staff, then it becomes a constant battle of, okay, yeah, but if let's say wizard, let's say the staff has spirit on it, it's not really a preferred item for a wizard. The wizard's got a better one. The wizard just rolling need on it because he can, and he's the only one in the group that can roll need on it. And now he's needing it to go put it in the vendor for 40 gold. So it's not only people that can't use it, it's people that don't want to use it, and they have the ability to roll need on it. So it's a constant battle of, well, where's the line on that? Is every dagger that drops going to be a need for that rogue, whether he needs it or not, because he knows he can go sell it? Especially in groups that you don't have, again, a good close relationship. It's like just kind of a pull together group whenever you get on, pug group, if you will, and you just pull some, hit chat up, pull some players together, y'all go start running through a dungeon, and then the next thing you know, every single time an item drops that particular person can need on, they're needing on it just because they can. So
yeah, if I could just real quick,
yeah,
what I was going to point out is that I'm probably going to go down a rabbit hole of probably an unpopular opinion, but I am a big fan of gear level, item level, a metric that summarizes the actual strength and value of items. A lot of people don't like that because they feel that it trivializes player skill and all kinds of stuff when assessing whether somebody can come in a group, or locks people out of content because you have to have a certain item level to get to a certain place, what have you. But having an item level enables you to explore certain things that you can do with the loot system, such that you still allow need before greed. Every wizard can need on that wizard item. But the wizards who get an item level increase have priority need. So if I'm a wizard and it's a side grade, and I do want it for a side grade, then if it doesn't increase my item level, but there's a wizard in the group who has something just slightly worse, and they really need the item and it would bring them up to par for the content, I am all for that. I have always wanted something, because it keeps people, like you were saying, from needing on the item because they want to toss it to their ult, or they want to sell it, or whatever their ambitions are, and disenchant, whatever. I think it'd be really cool to bring a second level factor into need before greed, that it doesn't just rely on class and level. It also relies on actual need.
So I guess thinking through it that way, I don't mind that. I think it would be very complicated, and it might get there might be some finicky spots within it, some loopholes for people to take advantage of. So I'm not saying that it couldn't be possible. It might work perfectly, but depending on the situation, there might be some loopholes in it that really negate its use even, and make it to where it's not really useful later down the road. For example, if you have people that are pretty close on item level altogether, and if before they click that button, let's say as soon as they hit greed, it calculates what my item level is at that time when I hit greed. Well, if I'm sitting there and I throw just a random low level item into my slot instead of one of my top tier items, then potentially I can lower my item level and always beat that system. Something like that. People might find loopholes down the road, which that's where you come into the issue. And that's what the same issue is here. There's a loophole. It's, so for me, I would honestly, and I know this is maybe weird to some people, but I would honestly just like to see a greed system. Pass or greed. Don't even give me an option for need. And instead, if we have needs, I would hope that as a group leader, I might have options to handle those the best I can. Like, for example, if I'm a trusted member of the community, if I really have a reputation that I care about, and I'm putting together a group, I would love to have a greed system, and then I would love to have it to where, let's say they have item levels. Let's say they have some sort of color. Let's say I think we have the common, we have maybe an epic, legendary, whatever it is. But let's say you have a common item, and you're not going to really, as a group leader, I don't need to address all the common items. Hey, if a common item drops, roll greed on it if you want it. If you get it, great. If you don't, it is what it is. But if we had it to where every time an epic item or some sort of legendary item dropped, or whatever they call those items, later down the road. But whatever, if we had one of these items drop that give stat bonuses and have, increased, abilities based off of, because it's a rare item, for example. If we have a rare item drop, I think it's a better way of putting it. And as a group leader, I may say, now I would like to help control where that goes to, who it goes to. Because as a person, I'm going to care about my reputation. As a leader of that group, I'm going to make it as fair as possible. And if I have two people that can use that item, I'm going to explain to them, okay, we're going to roll on it. Or before we even start, like you said, the communication factor, before we start that group, I'm going to flat out say, look, I'm going to provide the person with the greatest need this item if it drops. Or this item, for items that drop, I'm going to look at who needs it the most, who could benefit the most from it. And if they don't agree to that, then they don't agree to that. Or if we agree to, we're just going to roll the dice on it, then I think that's something up front that should be determined. And it never is. It never is. It, in my opinion, should be, but it absolutely never is. You're never going to go into that conversation. But if I'm somebody that has a reputation that I want to keep intact, and I want to make sure people know me and trust me, then I think that as a group leader, that's something I should be doing. I should be setting that expectation of, hey guys, just so you know, I'm doing group loot on greed with rare items and above at my discretion to pass out. And I'll pass them out to the person that needs the most. Or if you would like, we can go to the group loot or greed loot on all. Whichever you would prefer, let's have a vote and see what it is. And if people can't decide, I'll decide for them. If we have like I said, if we have it to where we have issues, then we'll just say, okay, we'll find somebody else. I'm sorry, it's not going to work out. I don't want to have an argument later down the road or have somebody upset with me because they didn't get loot that they think they should have gotten for some reason or another. So I do think the communication is key there, but I do think that something like a greed system, take the need out, just a greed system, and then allow the players to work it out between themselves, is something that I'm looking for myself, because I think something like that, kind of really makes it, it puts it on the players, puts it on their reputation more so than a system that you can work around.
Yeah, and I want to say that the Pantheon community is going to be capable of that kind of behavior. There's some skepticism because I've seen over time a general deterioration. Flexer was saying something kind of pessimistic about MMOs, but he's not wrong. That thanks to WoW, there's basically no longer a standard level of player etiquette. That's a pretty gross generalization. I have to say, to some extent, it is kind of true. It's very easy for people to lose sight of community and their social persona, just whatever makes them known in the game, because in certain games it doesn't matter. I'm hoping that Pantheon puts a lot of pressure again on people needing to maintain their persona and to be
Yeah.
a reputable, somebody who you actually want to deal with and group with, and not just be friends with and choose that person over others, but that you're not a world-renowned scumbag.
Yep. Agreed.
If to cap it up, to I guess put a nail in the coffin here, I can kind of entertain what you want, what you would like loot to be, but if you had to choose a system that ruled them all, because you know the greed system's not going to work because it's going to make more people unhappy than it is happy. Because it's fair, nobody has a trump, but then you're that guy that's been spending 6 weeks in this dungeon trying to get this one trinket that does one specific thing, and you've literally lost it every single time because everybody can loot it. What is the one loot system that rules them all for you?
The one that rules them all,
Yeah.
um, it would have to be. I would have to put it at. I believe I'd have to say it would be a master loot system. Um, I would have to say I would put more trust and faith, and I'm not saying that I would necessarily be the leader and be the one looting, but I'm saying that, for example, if I had to pick a system which I trusted the most, I would have to put it into a master loot system because if, for example, I spent 6 weeks trying to get that one trinket and I'm running with the same group and the same group leader each time, I would know exactly where the downfall is in that and I would be able to adjust it. If, however, I create a group and I say, look, guys, here's the deal. I'm creating a group. There is one stipulation, which is this trinket, XYZ, if it so drops, I would like to have it. Does anyone have an issue with it? If that's stated up front and that system works, I think for me, if I go into that and I know up front I'm not going to have an opportunity to get that trinket and I want it, then I'm accepting that as a person going into that because that leader is going to take that. Now, if I'm going into it and that's not set up front and that, person takes that just because they want it, I'm going to go, okay, noted, never grouping with this person again. And that's where that reputation comes into play. And I'm hoping that that's a big thing within Pantheon. I know in the older MMOs, reputation really meant a lot to me and to other people. So I'm hoping that something like that. But that's the only system, honestly, that, and I know it's weird because I would put more trust in people than a system. But I mean, I would know to steer myself away from people, or I would look to myself. In worst case times, I would look to myself to make those decisions, and I would try to make them as best as I could.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think most loot systems will work. I think it's trying to find a system that people can trust intrinsically, every group that they get into, that they're not going to be burned. I think
Yeah.
when people ask this question, they want the peace of mind that the very first group that they get into, with the very first piece of loot that they actually care about, that they have a reasonable shot at getting it, and that somebody's not going to just loot it to themselves. But the master loot system, I see people, the other 5 people in the group, feeling really anxious, and some people more anxious than others. Um, so just talking about like 5, 6 randos don't even know each other. Master loot would just feel too. It would be stressful. But I agree because you and I will have the luxury of being part of a static group or something, or our
Yeah.
guild,
Yeah.
and working with people that we will trust. I think the people who ask this question are the ones who will find themselves playing in random groups, and they just want something fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and so Day, we actually talked, and that was what I was talking about earlier with the greed system. So Day mentioned in here having a random pop up that you list of items you can loot, and it shows them all, and you can either roll or pass. That's more or less what I was talking about with the greed system. And again, I think there's loopholes in every system, and I think the key for us, here's the key in Pantheon: options. Just like any MMO, give us options. What works best for that group, whether it's a group of random individuals or whether it's a guild group of people that know each other and play with each other nightly. Give us options so that we can best determine what fits that particular group and time in which we think how we need to work with the loot going forward. So, I absolutely agree. I think that there's a lot of possibilities that you can have here when it comes to looting and how it's done. I think there's no one possibility that's better than them all, and hopefully whatever we get in place will be options. I think that's the key for it. Let's get some options in place, and hopefully those options will be able to find the best suited fit for us for that particular event, or night. Like you said, there's a human factor in all of it, regardless. And if you take the human factor out completely, then you go into the I'm now just relying on the game. And if the game has any sort of random variable in it, such as rolling of a dice, some people, again, we talked about the rage quit, some people can get to that point where I'm now involved in this for 6 weeks. Like you said, I've done this 100 times, and every single time I get outrolled for no apparent reason. It's just completely random luck, and it's bad luck, that I've had to do this so many times and lost so many of those items because of a silly mechanic within the game that I can't change. So I think having the options there to fluctuate between what you need and don't need depending on the group or that night is very critical to the success of a group in their looting. So
so everybody out there listening to Pantheon Radio, you need to join Reignborn. We are fair with our loot, and we will take care of you.
Oh, of course. And with that, again, I think that's going to be a thing too. I'm hoping to see guilds have meaning. Not just ours, but other guilds. I want Pantheon guilds to have meaning, and hopefully that's one of the things that really comes to light when you see reputation, when you see looting habits, when you see the challenge of the game itself. I'm hoping that all of this combines to that old school MMO feel where when I had a guild, it actually meant something. It was a group of individuals that I wanted to play with on a nightly basis. It wasn't just a group that I was associated with or that I was a part of for a raid, and that was it. It was actually people that I enjoyed being around and a part of, enjoyed playing with on a nightly basis. So I'm hoping that we see guilds become more of a critical piece of Pantheon versus just something else in the game.
I hope so too. And I think we will see that more so in Pantheon, especially in the earlier months. I think the type of people coming to Pantheon are a different cut of fabric than the typical MMO goers. So I hope it's the community everybody wants it to be. But
absolutely.
Part of that is everybody needs to be the community they want. So
absolutely. So lastly, I know we're getting close to time here, but I'm going to kick this off because I don't have a really good answer for this, but I did have somebody ask this question. I wanted to make sure that we touched it just so, if anybody has any questions, excuse me. Like I said, guys, if anyone has any questions or anybody wants to reach out to us, you can do that on twitch.tv/sacred. That's SAICRED. Or you can hit me up on Twitter with @sacredtv. And I'm trying to get these questions answered as soon as we can. But one of the questions that was asked was, I want to know if buffs, debuffs, environmental effects are going to have the same window, and I know this is a quick hand, guys, so bear with me as I'm reading through it. But and we going to have to deal with buffs dropping as debuffs right over them, like in EQ. Okay, so I'm gonna translate that into: are we going to have buffs dropping in the same window? Debuffs, buffs, environmental effects, all that, is that all going to be in the same window, or is that going to be separated? Or can we?
Before you go on, let me bring up to speed. We did talk about this a little bit.
Oh yeah, okay, perfect.
We did, but go for it, because I think people want to hear your opinion on it. If you see in Twitch chat right now, they're talking about, hey, I know that question because we talked about it.
Yeah, no, perfect. Okay, I'm glad you talked about it. Yeah. And again, so are we going to finally see a debuff window? So I'll say it like this. I can't answer yes or no to that right now. Personally, I can say for me, what I'd like to see is I would like to see them separated in a way, of course. I would like to see it to where we do have separation between those and we can distinguish those very quickly. So, that's just my opinion on that. I would love to see those separated in a way that makes sense. Is not going to be, I personally don't want to see a giant mass of boxes all over my screen, in random different locations. I like to have it clean, simple, but I like it to also make sense. So I want to see, hopefully, us, come up with a way, or VR come up with a way that makes sense of showing those in a way that it's not only identifiable, but it's also quick and easy on the eyes. If I get a debuff on me, I can quickly pick that up. And I, without even really looking at it, I can quickly identify I've got a debuff. And then I need to look at it to really tell what that debuff is. But I can quickly just out of the corner of my eye see something that comes up. Oh, got a debuff on me. I know this now. Or, oh, I've hit an environmental effect. I know this now.
Do you know if they're going to allow modding?
Okay, when you talk about UI?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can't speak for certain, but at one point in time, I do know that there was a comment to, and I believe it was Brad who was saying there are a lot of very creative and skilled individuals out there when it comes to creating like UIs, for example. And from my understanding, he went on to say they would like to find a way to open it up to where people can actually create their own, kind of custom UI, custom look. That way, because there's people that come up with some really cool UIs and then some really just, great looking things. So I believe the idea is later down the road to allow that to happen. Now, I can't speak for certain that that's going to happen, but that was my understanding. So I just, I'm not going to with 100%, but I'm about 99% sure I read that at one point in time because I've had it in the back of my mind that I want to create a custom UI myself. And I've actually got a guy that I'm working with now that's a really, he's kind of a very skilled Unity individual. So he's been talking to me and I've been giving him ideas about what I'd like to see because I personally love a very clean, simple, slick UI. I don't need all the bells and whistles. I just want it to be very clean and slick. I really want to experience the game as a whole, but just have enough on there to where I know what's what and, have it all organized. So I've been talking to him, basically about what that would look like, how that would come to pass and things like that. And he said it's very simple. So I'm very excited about that. I'm hoping that we do see to where we're able to create some custom UIs down the road because I do think people are very, very creative and skilled when it comes to UIs. And I'm hoping that, that door's open for us. So,
and just to jump in, I know we're getting low on time, but on that point of you want to know when a debuff is hit you want quick information. One of my favorite UIs that's ever been out there is something called Power Auras from World of Warcraft. I think it was best around Wrath of the Lich King, maybe Burning Crusade. People on Twitch or on the radio might remember it. It basically gave these little visual indicators right around your character. It was like boom, right in your face. And it was so effective at just telling you, oh, you've been slowed, or hey, you've got your proc ready. Use your proc. So I hope that they do allow stuff like that. Because that's one of my favorite ways, especially in PvP, where you can't just be looking around your entire screen. You got to be looking at other stuff. It's nice to have that quick little ending.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I apologize for the interruption earlier, guys. I had to go take care of some family stuff. But Muldoon appears to have held it down very nicely. I hope y'all enjoyed talking with him. And Mal, thank you so much for helping out, getting everything started. And I always love having you here, man. So y'all, if y'all haven't already, make sure you go and follow Mal on Twitch. Mal, do you want to go ahead and give your Twitch channel real quick?
Yeah, sure. And by the way, I'm having so much fun with this. Thanks for having me, of course. It is twitch.tv/MRPD Muldoon, Muldoon. And I'm starting up streaming like any day now. I promise to be on as much as Sacred, and we're going to have a lot of fun with it.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, again, some just quick news as we're wrapping up here. Just a reminder, March 5th, Kilson and Zippy going to be on with VOT. Lex, I see you out there, man. Always appreciate you hanging out with us. I'm looking forward to the show on March 5th. But that's 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They're going to be broadcasting live on Pantheon Radio right here, as well as on Twitch TV /Pantheon_VOT. So make sure you go follow those guys if you haven't already. If you've been following Pantheon and you haven't been paying attention to Voice Terminus, then I don't know where you've been, guys. These guys are everywhere. Love listening to their shows. Love watching them. So make sure you tune in for that one on March 5th. Going to be exciting. And then we also have, again, the Pantheon Radio competition that's lasting until March 30th. Make sure you go and submit that at pantheonradio.com. Check that out. Look for the little Enter Here logo at the top right-hand corner. And then just a quick reminder, Nick's hit us up with his February 2018 roundup. So if you haven't seen that, go check out Twitter at Nick, HOTS, Hots, Nick Hots, or Nick Hots, whichever one you want to say. But go check him out on Twitter. He's got his roundup posted up there. He's posted on a few other forums as well. I believe it's on Reddit as well as the forums and other places. But it's a really, really great thing he does every month for us. He creates these roundups and does a fantastic job with it. So go check that out. But other than that, guys, if we have any questions coming in, please send them to me on Twitter or hit us up on Twitch. And thank you all for hanging out with us tonight. I appreciate everybody on Pantheon Radio. And, you know, like I said, guys, go check it out if you haven't already, pantheonradio.com. It's a really, really neat application site. They're doing a lot of cool things for us, and we're excited to be a part of it. So thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us tonight, and we're going to get off here.
Thanks. Goodbye forever.
All right. So for everybody out there watching on Twitch, that's the end of the Pantheon Radio segment.